Arrow,
Here.
Keith, Hendricks, Gill,
Here.
Woodhouse,
Here.
Eric, sorry. Fleming.
Here.
And Brookins.
Here.
Have a form, sir.
Okay. And comply with the open meetings law.
Yes.
Great. All right. Let's have approval of the agenda. Can I motion to approve the agenda?
I'll
Yeah.
second. I'll second.
Second, okay.
First.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I guess we might have public comment. If anybody's online. I don't see anything.
Should we introduce the people that are here?
Yes.
This is our new zoning administrator. This is Electra Dre.
Welcome.
Yeah, she started the 6th, the day of our meeting, so she couldn't be here. So I had her look at this ordinance thing as a fresh pair of eyes. I've never done it before. So things are going, we're getting things going, so.
So, most of the hand markups and things that are in here, who did most of that? You?
I and Katrina,
Okay.
and then there's some from Electra in here.
Okay.
So I just kind of took all of ours, made comments, and my understanding, we'll use the chapter 119 version, which is the one online. The official.
The best one for us to look at to follow along is the Word version.
Well, the one you got in your right hand is that's the old ordinance. This is the new one, and it's in the Code of Ordinances online.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
The Word document. Yeah. This is not a Word document, is it?
Yeah, there is one, but
Is there?
it's mostly. One of the things that they did, switching ordinance, they put the definitions, general provisions in the front. They had that in there before. And, you know, I don't know if you guys going through it have seen anything on the first, maybe this page 1 of 38. Anything that looks, I don't think anything changes in that.
You talking about definitions, basically?
Where did they put the definitions in this?
Says general provisions.
Several provisions, page,
Page 1.
um,
Page 1 of 38.
yeah, I don't remember where the definitions are in here. I think they were in the back.
They're in the back.
Right.
Yep, they're in the back. That's 2 pages. So I'm wrong, sorry. Page 2, the one with the map on it, that changes every so often if they reclassify the highways. For as far as setbacks. So those don't really change unless. And that we get kind of, I think, from DOT. If something changes, heavy use of it. On page 3, the one that says in parentheses 2. After looking at it, I had written down that, clear definition of principal structure, but after looking at the definition on page 37, I think it's a lot clearer. I don't know if it changed or not.
I have a question about that. We define principal structure as means the building or structure containing the primary use of a property.
Yeah,
So as a landscape of agriculture changes and there's a farmhouse removed from a property, there's a barn and 2 mobile homes. What is the principal structure?
If it was primarily agricultural in use prior, I would say the barn remains the primary building.
that's where our confusion, it's hard, the interpretation is, we had the one there, that was the Borelli one.
Yeah.
You wanted, and it was trying to figure out what the setback was from that. Katrina it took a while to figure out. She interpreted one way and some of it was a trip, but we got it straightened out. But yeah, that is kind of confusing, is what is the principal structure. If the farmhouse is gone, then
The thing
The
that
farmhouse were there, would the farmhouse be the principal structure?
I would say that the landowner would have the opportunity to make their case. So if the use of the barn terminated with the demolition of the farmhouse, and it's just kind of a nice thing to look at, or maybe there's something in there that they don't go in there often for, but they are using it for storage, then they could show that the residence would be the primary building of the parcel. But if we were just driving by, saw a barn on what we knew to be farmland and then two mobile homes, the barn is the primary building. So, yeah, it would be one where if it came up, either they would need to contact us, and as the one person did, and say, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And we say, well, our interpretation of the ordinance is this. And then that would be an invitation for them to counter that interpretation. But I don't think there's a way to perfectly define primary
Yeah.
building.
Sure.
Because as soon as we do, we're gonna find one where it's a 50-50 split. And
Yeah.
if we do it by time, or
Yeah, sure.
And that's only if what they're doing is gonna be within the normal setbacks of this page.
Right, yep.
So,
Is there a need to regulate to that level? Are people gonna be doing willy-nilly stuff, or is there, I mean, there's so much here, and I'm thinking, really, do we need all of this? Is this really important for us to have? People are breaking rules, like, and Vernon's got nothing, basically, somebody said, or whatever.
no, Vern doesn't have any zoning.
So, I'm just curious that we've got so much and they've got nothing. And is this necessary, is my question.
I think in reality, the setbacks are more so that, for like, we talk about the vision corners, it's all for sighting,
It's almost like a highway thing, really. I mean,
Yeah.
What do I know about the setback from a corner and that? And some of it's non-metallic mining stuff too. I mean,
well, that is not in the chapter,
okay.
that was
The
removed.
whole thing is gonna be gone. Oh, good. 'Cause
It's referenced in there, but the non-metallic is a
Okay,
separate,
Good, good.
because that was like, I don't know why it was in there too, so.
as far as Vernon County, we say they don't have zoning, but I mean, they have a zoning administrator, they have a certain, it's weird, but the county has not got every parcel identified as a certain zoning district, but they still have, I don't know, can you explain how they?
I think that like building stuff would come in with the highway, the right of ways and stuff.
Yeah.
Like a town, if it's on a township road, the township, I don't know how they,
I mean, they have to requirements. It's not like they can, there's state requirements or state codes, there's, a lot of stuff out there, but they don't have this. And are they suffering because they don't have an ordinance like what we have here with all of this detail and minutia that regulates so much stuff, and it puts a lot of,
go ahead.
Vernon's the exception. Like I said, I went out and looked at several other counties. They all have zoning. They don't do it quite like us.
Right.
But they're fairly detailed, sometimes more than we are. And I think it solves a lot of problems before they start. If they have this stuff pinned down. It's kind of the way I look at it.
I guess what do I know? I'm just new to
Yeah.
this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, do you have issues where people come in and say, oh, I was gonna do this, but I can't because we're zoned or something like that?
We do, but then we've had people come in and, like in an unzoned township, well, why can they do that? Because you're not zoned. Well, why can they, and I can't do
So
it.
somebody else can do something and they don't like it because there's not a regulation that.
Yeah.
prohibits it.
So, there's somebody in Bloom, we had a person come in Bloom and was complaining because somebody's building something here, and I'm like, we can regulate the septic, we can regulate floodplain, we can regulate shoreline. And the address, we can't regulate anything else.
Back to the principal structure thing. The thing that confuses me about when I hear the word principal, to me, that means a single thing. But some of the wording makes there sound like there could be more than one principal structure.
Well, no, there's one principal structure, but it's deciding what that is, if there's You know, and if there's a question, like Katrina, the one was a question on, she contacted Attorney Wendell to get that clarified.
And could we put that in the definitions in the back? Principal structure.
It is,
It
it
is.
is,
Look under
it's
structure.
structure principle.
Oh,
Yeah, it took me a while to find it too. Like he said, there's not a real good way to define it. Most time it's pretty easy,
Yeah.
but it's these weird ones that don't happen very often.
okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just that, you know, it's mentioned that, you know, it's basically, everything's changing, agricultural,
Yep,
definitely. And we're gonna see some more, we're gonna see different business models.
well, that's one of the things too, talking here, especially when you get to the commercial and what's allowed and what's not and other, I think we need to, I don't know, have it so it's easier to, I don't know if we can make it broader or, you know, because there's some things I see that are going in that, or they've gone in other counties that, you know, like distilleries, breweries, that kind of thing. I think there's some things that we need to,
On
Look
farm
at-
operations, on farm processing operations,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, and then page 4, those are the sight lines, and that's making sure we're not, there's nothing going in the, where people can't see. And then page 5, okay, there was a little bit of a, we jumped the gun. We took out R2, we need to put R2 back in. Because if you look at the definitions, R2 is in villages and like say Sextonville and subdivisions like Elmar Acres. And R2 is in everywhere else. And so in that table there, I don't know if we can just, setbacks for R2 and R1 are the same. I don't know if we could do R1/R2 there. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Because we really need to put that back in because, yeah, now that I understand it, understand a little bit more, I thought they were the same and they're not.
Hey, while we're on the table, I'm just wondering why the floor area for ag forest is only 600 and the others are 960. What's up with that?
I think that's the minimum size.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well,
I can't tell you. I do not know why it was that way. I've wondered that too.
Well, ag residential and residential both have residential components. So presumably you want enough house for people. C1 is commercial,
Yep.
so that one you want flexibility in. I don't know why you can have a smaller commercial structure than an agricultural structure. That seems a little
Yeah,
backwards.
yeah.
I don't want to dissect the whole thing, but there's weird stuff like this all through it. And
Mhm.
I don't know, where do we stop? I just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah, well, I think we have to bring those up. And how did you say that when the commercial structure is smaller than the
Yeah, the
structure?
commercial can go to a smaller structure size than the agricultural forestry, which, I mean, it's right there in the name. Presumably, you could just have a parcel that is forest. Why do you need a 600 if you're building a structure on it? Why do you need a minimum 600-foot footprint for that?
Oh, minimum.
Well, I'm wondering if, at least is so that they're not building a lot of little structures. Could be why, you know, something that's getting a permit for a lot of small things, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have brought that up.
No, I'm not, I don't know.
If we just go through and look at the things you guys have identified that have come up as issues or where it needs clarification or things where we've seen a similar thing, that's fine, but I think I'm gonna stop asking
Yeah.
why this is like it is.
And my question on the R1 and the R2, that third one from the bottom is lot served by public sewer. My understanding is R2 and R1 have to be at least 2 acres. 1,000 square feet is not 2 acres. My understanding is that anything under 2 acres, if they want to build something on it, they have to go to the Board of Adjustments and get a
Well, where's that written?
Yeah, I saw that too. I wondered why, because that's gonna inhibit building basically. In fact, people have said, this is not a friendly place to build.
Well, I realize that. I'm just saying the R2, the R2 has to be, it's a minimum of it's 2 to 5 acres. That's my words.
I guess what I'm saying is, they need to both say the same thing. The table and where,
Right. That was, because you look at. Lot size requirements.
what page?
Okay, look, lots not served by, okay, right before it is lots not served by public sewer, that's where they list the minimums, which are 2 and 5.
I'm just saying that was.
Right, I mean,
that's
that's
the
the rationale,
That's
but.
purpose in it. You know,
Right.
Yeah, and then a lot of times I think the reason they picked 2 was because with septic, you don't want to have enough, or, but doesn't mean they can't build on it, it means they just go to the Board of Adjustments and get a, you know. But I don't understand why lots served by public sewer are less.
Well, there's more setback requirements for septic than sewer.
That's true. That's true. Oh, I suppose, we don't, so that would be like in Sextonville. Sextonville has a public sewer.
Okay,
That would make sense. I didn't think about it.
um,
They don't have septic systems in Sextonville. They have a,
we actually had an application not that long ago where someone,
nope,
bought, I don't know, 2,000 feet or something from their neighbor because of the failed septic.
Yep.
They needed.
yep. So now thinking about it, I think that's why it's there, because it's like Sextonville, they can be smaller, but it's public sewer. Okay, never mind, don't.
So,
No, it is going through this, it's a lot. But then you look at the next page, and under B, and lots not served by public sewer, they've got a minimum lot area shall be 43,560, which is basically 1 acre. But back here, it's 2 acres. Or shouldn't that say 2 acres there instead of dimensions for 1 acre? Under B1, in Roman numeral 1.
Well, which one's right?
Well, the minimum is 2 acres for a lot not served by public sewer.
So then let's just fix it then.
But, well, here's the problem. I look at where it says B, it says dimensions of the building sites in general commercial and single-family residential district shall meet. Well, you look back here in the chart, and commercial is 1 acre and residential is 2, where lots not served by. It's contradicting itself. Because commercial can be the 1 acre, but residential is supposed to be 2 acres. So this.
Well, in cases like that where there's any consistency, I don't think you should look to us to make a decision. I think you
Yep.
know this stuff better. You make your best judgment.
Yep.
And
That's where the case where the numbers don't meet
Yeah.
the table, and maybe this is something we need to figure out how to word that so, because it doesn't match the table.
Right.
Is the table right or the numbers wrong?
The table is right. Yeah, because residential is at least 2 acres.
But it's simply just correcting a typo, basically.
Yeah, so this needs to be fixed. We'll figure out maybe the wording of
Okay.
it. And I don't know And there, yeah, and there are some other things that you're talking about, the substandard lots. And that's where we can go Board of Adjustments if need to be, if it doesn't meet.
When there's a lot that's you think probably too small to fit in a septic, doesn't matter if, what, I mean, they can't appeal that if it's too small, right? I mean, the Board of Adjustments hopefully would consult with you
Yeah.
and turn it down.
Right, we've got, there was one guy that called, it was a commercial lot in Gotham. And it is, I don't think it's much bigger than this room.
Probably smaller in this room if it's the lot I'm thinking that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
It was the old post office.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Like, we can't put a residence there because you don't have room for a septic and there's no sewer, so. Let's see, accessory. We didn't really see anything in the next thing.
Would you allow a building permit if someone put in a NSF certified composting system?
You mean like composting toilet?
Yeah,
The composting toilet has to meet the,
yeah, NSF
Yep.
specs. Then they could build one there, is my question. See, there's a lot of rabbit holes here.
Well, there is, and there's
Yep.
changes coming. There's
Mhm.
more, there is.
and that's something that they would have to, it would still have to go to the Board of Adjustments, something like that. As far as if they'll allow it. Because it's
Well,
not,
but see, that's, I don't know if the Board of Adjustments is the right place to answer a question like, that's more of a policy thing.
it is, but as far as the final thing to give approval for the actual building, a residence on that size of a lot would have to come through the Board of Adjustments.
Right, all right, here's another one. I said I wasn't gonna do this, but
Where?
the comprehensive plan that we just recently passed, one of the things it talks about in terms of trying to plan for the future and dealing with housing, all that was accessory dwelling units. Now, that's not defined right now, and how exactly that would happen in the existing lots and parcels, I don't know, but septic's gonna be one of the questions, and we'll need to, if we're gonna try to allow accessory dwelling units, what's a conversation we have to have, but if we're gonna allow it, that's one of the things we gotta figure out.
And some of it is like the septic stuff itself is all state, we've got a zoning or septic sanitation ordinance, but it all relies on the state statutes.
Right,
What the state would allow us for.
right, but as far as the state's concerned, if you have an NSF certified composting toilet, you're good.
Right.
But is that something we would then incorporate in indoor zoning? And that's my question. I'm not saying we can resolve it right now. I'm just pointing that out.
I think that would actually be two separate, but it's like it is now. You build a house, but you have to have a septic. There's two separate permits.
Right,
And then you have to follow the rules for the septic on here, and that includes the composting toilets. And that they have to sign certain things to have the composting, they have to, have a maintenance issue, like saying, well, how they're gonna take care of their,
yep, yep.
and it's gotta be recorded.
So I'm just saying in the case of this one, go from wherever, the guy could say, hey, I'm gonna put in this legal certified composting toilet. I guess you could say that it's okay then.
You could do that, but yeah, you could do that part of it, but then the others still have to build, would have to go through the Board of Adjustments.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is the main reason I'd be concerned about it being too small, the lot being too small is because of the septic, right? And so if you dealt with that by using a composting toilet, then maybe you would, maybe the Board of Adjustments would decide it's okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay, I'll stop.
Oh, no, that's fine. I like double advocate.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm not arguing, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. In the next page, under the zoning districts, we gotta add in back in the single family residential R2. And then we get into the ag forestry district. That's where it lists the minimum size, what the tenth is. We got, the permitted uses. And there's accessory uses, and that's where you guys passed that they could have up to 2 residences. Like that we need to put that in here, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where was that gonna go?
If this is the one that's online, it just hasn't been incorporated
Yep.
by Municode yet.
So we gotta
Would
make,
that be 4C?
page 9. Sorry,
The wording for 4C needs to be expanded a bit then.
It just, we already passed the
Yeah.
update to it. It just hasn't been incorporated
Right.
into the.
yeah,
It's supposed to be included.
yeah, when we're doing this whole thing, we'll do it then, right?
Well, when Municode, I think they update it quarterly or
Okay.
halfly, and they'll just. So like I'm looking at the Municode site for our code ordinances, and at the front, there's a whole thing of.
Right, things that need, yeah,
And so like if you look at the zoning code ordinance, it says amended. And if you click, well, how is it amended? It takes you to the ordinance that updated the residence definition. And so it will read up to 2 farm residences instead of just farm
Right,
residences.
okay.
yeah,
And that's no further action required on our part.
Yep.
It'll just be something
Right.
Municode updates.
I had a question on 4E. Prior non-conforming uses. We have all this stuff that's grandfathered in because, I don't know, are you allowed to use that term? I don't know. Because things were done before
Yeah.
the ordinance got created. So do we need to put dates in there so it's clear to everyone when this went into force? Is that?
There are conditions that trigger a review of the like if it's a legal non-conforming structure. So if you improve it beyond a certain value or stop using it for the purpose. So if you had a barn that was grandfathered in, you drove a tractor in and out of it every day, and then you stopped for 6 or 10 months or something like that, then we could say you've ceased using your barn for the purpose that it was a legal non-conforming use, and therefore it is no longer conforming. You need to bring it into code or tear it down.
and well, I classify, they go, there's a barn there, and it's been built there, it's been there, and there's a neighbor who's not involved in the farming operation, and their house is within, one of the things in here, I don't know, within 500 feet of that, the barn is within 500 feet of that residence. So that's allowed, but now if they were to build it, one that had to, I know one that had to get, years ago, their shed, they had a shed fire. And when they went to build a new shed, they had to go to the Board of Adjustments to get it because it was gonna be close, it would be the same, they were gonna build it in the same place, but it was, since the structure was not there anymore, they're within 500 feet of the neighbor, so they had to go through a variance.
Well, when we put in our pole barn, it was less than 500 feet from our neighbor, so we had to go through that step.
Yep, but the prior norm, okay, the barn that's there, we're not gonna make them move the barn or the shed.
Right.
But if something happens, that's when,
But let's say the barn's there and then they turn it into a wedding venue. And when did they start doing that? Well, I mean, it's not the same thing as it was before.
That would need to be zoned commercial for,
Well, I don't know.
use it as a wedding venue. That's
Yeah.
a whole different.
Does it depend on how often it's used?
So
So you
there's
say
nothing in
still
here about,
active.
see, that's something new that's,
Still in.
Or whatever, I just said wedding venue, but
But,
whatever.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's, yeah, I don't, I mean, I would think that we're absolutely.
I don't know
committed,
what
in the
that
case that-
D,
Yeah, that's, no, because a wedding venue would eliminate its use as a
Okay.
working barn. So, yeah, that a wedding venue is not an acceptable use under agriculture, forestry. They would need to rezone that building to commercial or maybe residential. At that point, it would be, and if that barn was in a legal non-conforming use, then by triggering that review, we would say, no, we're not giving you a permit to convert it to a wedding barn because then it will be an illegal non-conforming structure.
Right, but if it was a wedding venue before this was passed,
Then it's a prior
Right.
non-conforming use.
Yep.
okay,
Then, yeah, that's,
yep, that's where the prior non.
all right.
we'll say grandfathering and apologize if that's offensive to someone for some reason. It's the only term I know.
It's descriptive, we know what that means, basically, so I
Yeah.
don't think it's a problem.
One of the, and it's come up a couple different times. So under things that are allowed on the, starting on page 10, authorized, number 5, authorized, use is authorized by conditional use permit. And one of the things is, okay, D, it says temporary placement of a manufactured home less than 24 feet while a permanent dwelling is being constructed, except in circumstances. And then you go to J, it says replacement of an existing manufactured home less than 24 feet, or an existing mobile home less than 24 feet. And, I'm not sure. Do we need both of them, or?
So the
We want-
situation that's going to come up is that at 2.5 years, someone's mobile home is going to burn down. They're almost done construction on the
Yep.
primary residence. They're going to put up a replacement. Does that person have 6 months that they can keep that mobile home there, or does that person have a fresh 3 years? And so including both of those, or they don't need to be separate. You could say repairing or replacing of the repair or replacement of the temporary manufactured home either does or does not toll this deadline. So if you wanted to make, regardless of what building it is, it can only be there for 3 years, then you say it does toll this deadline. If you're saying that they can swap out, which I promise someone will abuse at
Right.
some point.
Right.
So is this just wordsmithing then to make it?
Wordsmithing and gamesmanship. So you think, all right, what is the words I'm putting in here? And then immediately how, if I were so inclined, could I exploit this? And you're trying to minimize the ways that things can be exploited while at the same time making it not so onerous that, you have to pay a lawyer to interpret it, or it just completely stymies any development. And it's a delicate balance for sure. You want to be able to be flexible so that we don't have to come back here when a new technology comes out or the landscape changes or something like that. We don't have to add in whole new definitions, but the more flexible it is, the more open it is for exploitation.
So I don't know how to fit, how. Do you want to see, I mean, you want to see it as they can do it for, because one of us says if it's with farm operations, they can have a mobile home there.
Mhm.
The second one is, if somebody's building a house, they can have a temporary there for 3 years. But now something happens, like you said, if something happens that they can replace it, because if it falls under C, they can, that's part of they can replace it, but that's where that those two, I don't want them to do like he says, is they use that as a tool to perpetually leave something there.
Yeah, right.
I know what you think of it, Trev.
Is it saying that D is temporary and J is permanent?
That's what I'm not
Is
sure.
that the difference?
I don't know.
Might be temporary, it's the, doesn't exist in J, doesn't B.
One suspects there was an event that caused J to be put in there.
Yeah, that's usually how things get added,
Yeah.
because there's an issue arises.
Right.
It doesn't say replacement of temporary.
No, it doesn't.
existing infection.
But if it's,
I could
We
hear
need to
it again.
Right, yeah, we made that phrase, except in exceptional circumstances, well,
yeah,
anybody can make a case that a circumstance
Yeah.
is exceptional.
but like I
There's
said,
an ability to allow in such a case where a temporary structure needed to be replaced. Exceptional circumstance, a fire that burns down a mobile home or whatever.
yeah,
My recommendation would just be to scrap J. It's a conditional use permit, so they're gonna have to come and apply for it. And it'll just be on the committee.
it's one of the, it's other C and D. Okay, it just adds one more thing going,
Hmm.
you know, I don't want, yeah.
So you are good with scratching it then? Okay, all right.
That's, because it's not saying you can't have a mobile home if it's part of the farm operation, you know, family member living there or something, but. Yeah, but they're both still conditional use permits. I mean, you can say yes or no. And I did say number 6, they're also listed under the setback table, but I think they're supposed to be in here to be in the setback table, correct?
Probably. Seems reasonable.
Okay,
Break one, does it?
Yeah, the table was probably adopted and then this was changed and
Yeah.
never got put into the table.
Or 8 or 5.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do what's wrong.
I just wanted to step out and run to the restroom, but I wanted to make sure I wasn't breaking quorum.
No, you're fine.
okay, and the next part is, starting on page 12 is the ag residential. And this was brought up, I don't know if you gentlemen were on, but I know Steve was on when there was a big item K, campers that are licensed and road ready and used for temporary parking and living purposes as long as they are removed between December 1st, March 1st, as long as a parking permit has been issued by the zoning administrator with the exception that any camper may be parked, no permit, for 14 consecutive days in 1 year. And then we had you know what I'm talking about, there was a case where they were basically living in their camper out. And there was, yeah, this was before you guys started and I wasn't, Cheryl was the one that was here at the time. And there was a big controversy about that one. That they could live in, whether or not they could be in their camper. Instead of building a house or whatever, have a camper out there.
Sounds like somebody who's next to me.
It was a different township, but yeah. You're Buena Vista, right?
It's right by, Lone
Yeah.
Rock. Somebody living in the woods in camp.
I can't hear you.
We have somebody living in the woods in the camper up by Lone Rock. It just sounds exactly like.
Yep.
All right, maybe this is the place to ask. Okay, camper. What about a tiny home on wheels?
Tiny home is not road ready.
Even if it's on wheels?
I'm making some assumptions. to me, reading a camper, I think the thing that you can attach to a truck that is inherently, it is, the wheels are an inherent part of the camper.
Okay.
Or it's an RV and can just drive itself. A tiny home on wheels, I can't imagine a situation where it's not meant at some point for it to come off of the wheels.
Fair enough. But again, I'm raising the question, what about tiny homes? Are they allowed? Where do they fall?
Well, tiny homes,
You guys
they're,
have seen them, right? They're starting to
Yep.
pop up everywhere.
yep, and they're allowed as, and I don't know how they fall with this.
We need to add them as a permitted use in the different zones.
How tiny is a tiny home? Do they have a 600-foot footprint?
Some of them,
Then it would just be a single family residence. Or single person.
Up to 600 foot is a tiny home, and over 600 would be a single family residence or something like that. You gotta have some kind of delineation.
Well, there's plenty that are less than 600.
That's what I'm saying, is
Okay.
those would be tiny, but
Yeah.
over 600 would be single family, right? But I'm saying you need some kind of designation, like, where's the cutoff? What's a tiny home, basically?
Well, wherever the cutoff is, what are we gonna say about those ones that are the cutoff? That's my question.
Right.
Do they just need to be in the definitions?
Yeah, well, not just the definitions, are they a permitted use or not? And-
Well, are they structurally that different than any other type of dwelling that they would need their own classification?
well, okay, in here,
Right.
on the chart, it says floor area has to be at least 960 square feet in ag residential and the residential districts.
Is that floor or yard?
I thought it says floor.
Let's put it this way, I view them as, maybe they're not a camper, but they're more like a camper than an actual resident.
On page 5.
How are they doing
It
their
says
thing?
960
I don't have a
square
septic
feet.
system, they're self-contained typically oftentimes, you know what I mean? So it's a different designation than what we're dealing with. Right?
I'm just saying, if we're gonna talk about campers, then that to me opens the door asking, what about tiny homes?
Yeah.
The tiny homes I've seen are basically shipping containers with windows cut. Tiny homes I've seen are basically shipping containers with windows cut into.
Okay,
So I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
well, there's some that are actual, they're obviously a little shed on wheels,
Yeah.
essentially.
And they manufacture them and then they take them someplace and, yeah.
Yeah.
The east side of Madison, yeah, there's the whole homeless tiny home village within the city itself.
Yeah.
You know,
So that's where this whole thing is kind of confusing.
How we doing, Kathy?
I would go back to the camper. What if they're not living in it? Can you park a camper on your property if there's nobody living in it?
That's where we've had some issues. They've had to put them in a shed, don't they? I think.
It has to be where, from what I remember from asking, it has to be in a location that's less visible as far as where, depending on how your property is, but to try not have it just parked out in the very front of your house. Try to have it to the back of the house, that kind of thing. I don't remember exactly how it's worded, but I did ask about that.
I had a friend that said, can they park their camper on my farm? And I said, yeah, why not? And it's, I'm not close to any other houses or anything, but I realized that I could be violating a code here or something, but it's, but I mean, these are, like I say, there's so many questions that.
And I think that's something we need to look at. Each one of those new uses that have come up that even when this was done, nobody did that much for the tiny homes. And they are kind of different than the campers. So, but I don't know if,
Storage of campers or other major recreational equipment, no such equipment shall be used for living or housekeeping purposes. As far as I read that, you can park a camper smack dab in the middle of your front lawn.
yep, going to this.
Read that again.
Storage of campers or major recreational equipment, no such equipment shall be used for living or housekeeping purposes.
So if they're
Does
just,
it say anything about where it has to be or can be parked?
no. But then,
It says storage, so maybe there's an implication that but
it doesn't specifically say it has to be in the building.
Yeah.
And that K one, I don't know that there was, or they're thinking people are living in them full-time.
I mean, I'm thinking like hunters? A hunter camps out for a while or,
I don't know how to handle that one, if it's something that needs to be in there, or,
uh, at the end of the day, somebody comes to me on December 1st and says there's someone illegally living in their camper and it hasn't been removed. 99 times out of 100, I am not going to get before a judge to argue this before March 1st. And by the time that happens, they've already,
yeah.
they're back in compliance and the judge is going to be, well, I could fine them for every day that they violated,
Right.
but they're not violating anymore.
Yeah.
Keep your trailer. Mr.
Yes,
Person.
that was the whole thing we were talking about. You two were involved in that. It was a big discussion on it. It's like, do we want to get that?
Yeah, and the thing that we basically stated is that we were more concerned about septic, sewage, what are they doing when they're living in there, and no matter when it is, and then also for safety, because if they're living in there in December, what are they using for heat source? But that was where our discussions went. I don't know that we really finalized anything. It was just really more.
And the whole
concerns.
thing is with those, the septic, if we find out they're dumping on the ground, that's when we can get involved with
Septic.
the septic thing.
And then the last part of it can't be, or you can be parked with no permit for 14 consecutive days in any 1 year. That means we have to literally send someone to the property every day for a year, take pictures of the property, see that that thing is on there. And, at 15, I can start pursuing a citation for that. But
We've got other ones that are, more that I'm dealing with.
I think
I would,
you
I'd
can
like
get
to see-
creative with what we have existing. I mean, I have been called on to specifically interpret this provision previously. We just reread it here today, and I'm not sure that I could explain what all it means.
yeah, and we're not gonna have time to go out every day. We have enough trouble with the other ones we're dealing with.
Well, and I would say not a lot, not necessarily are they written so that you have to go out every day. It's just a guideline of what people can or cannot do. So
Yeah.
we're hoping that if people see this, that they follow what the ordinance is. And it's not necessarily hoping that we have to ever go out and enforce it.
Yeah, but somebody pulling a camper onto this little parcel they just bought, and they're gonna live there, they're not gonna go read our zoning ordinance.
Well, no, but what's gonna happen is potentially their neighbor might
Well,
complain
sure.
about it. And then there'll be discussion about it, maybe
Yeah.
a phone call to them and that kind of thing. So maybe they're not aware of the ordinance, but they might become aware of it based on a complaint.
How would this tie in if the neighborhood has a covenant that doesn't permit this kind of stuff? Does it override this?
That would be privately enforceable.
It is.
So the HOA or whatever
Okay.
organization holds the covenant would be able to pursue action for that.
So that local would override this then?
Only if it's more strict.
Not necessarily override, but different. So basically, this is our zoning ordinance. We're imposing this on the entire county. This one particular group of landowners has decided to enter into basically a contract with one another that these certain conditions are going to be met. So it's not necessarily a violation of our ordinance, but if it's a violation of that contract, then that's why it's privately pursued.
So I don't know if there's something we want to keep in there. Do we want to take out? Because that's,
Can we just say we need to do a little more homework?
right,
So-
that's fine.
The conditional use does allow temporary placement of a mobile home. And it says while a dwelling is being constructed, we could take that part out. But then if we allow for that provision in the conditional use permit, then we kind of get the best of both worlds. It's something that you can read and readily understand, and it's a conditional use. So if somebody's living in a camper, they haven't read our zoning ordinance, and their neighbor complains, we send a violation letter saying, hey, you know, we've gotten this complaint of a camper that you're living on in this property, just so you know, that's only allowable under a conditional use permit. And then they go, I'm either going to move my camper or I need to apply for this conditional use permit. They come and explain their situation, we evaluate the septic, the waste, whatever they're using to heat the place, if they're gonna be there through the winter, and then grant or deny the conditional use permit at that point.
That makes more sense than.
Where was that gonna be placed?
Place it in a conditional
So
use.
It exists under conditional use already.
Give me a page. So I can-
I'm looking at the raw thing, so I don't, it's section uses authorized by conditional permit, so section 3.
I'm missing section, must be. Oh, yep, I got it backwards.
E.
I got it, I think I got it backwards. At 13 and 14, page 13 and 14 switched around.
Where?
Page 13. Steve.
Yeah, I got mine backwards, so.
Third of the way from the bottom.
No, P you're talking about.
Yep.
And then, of course, it's talking about while a permanent dwelling is.
That would be the
constructed.
one change we,
Yeah, because we need to just maybe, because they might just be doing it temporarily for whatever reason.
yeah.
Oh, no, wait a minute. You're talking about on page 13,
Yeah, P.
item P.
Mhm.
That's talking about mobile homes. That's not talking about campers.
Mm,
Yeah, you're right.
fair.
Yep.
We could add campers to it, I think, and.
Well, I'm just saying right now, it doesn't say.
Right, no,
camper.
you're right.
Or copy and paste it and do it slightly differently so that we don't have to change as much language in the existing P. So,
Yep.
you know, a camper for living purposes. And so that differentiates it from the camper that are, the storage of campers that already exists in the permitted uses. And then we can impose further conditions on it, you know, if we want to, either camper shall be removed during the, you know, from December 1st to March 1st, or the applicant shall have to prove a safe means of heating the home.
And a septic.
Yep.
Is there a charge for that?
Yeah.
I mean, I should say, what charge would we charge for having someone there with a camper?
Conditions use,
The fee for the conditional use permit,
500.
500.
So all conditional uses 500. Okay.
And it's a one-time fee then, right?
Okay.
And that would attach to the property, not the camper. So,
Right.
you know, you pull it off, you upgrade a little bit, you pull it back on, you don't have to come back and reapply.
And then so author, what was it? Authorized by conditional use permit. I didn't realize, there's hospitals, rest homes, funeral homes, dental offices.
Wait, where are you looking?
It's, oh, sorry, that's in February. I'm on the wrong side. I put mine in backwards. Oh, I know what I was gonna ask about. Under permitted accessory uses, one of the questions that Katrina had brought up was, am I in the right place? No, I'm not.
Page 14 is not,
Yeah, well, it would be under authorized, yeah, you can have, I'm wrong, ag residential, you can have limited, you know, animals on it. I'm looking at actually, would be under the single family residence. One of the questions that came up, that she had brought up was, what if somebody wants to have, you know, a few chickens? You know, I don't know, those, you know, what I'm trying, I don't know.
I just talked about that before.
But no, wait, you're talking about for R1 and R2.
Right,
Yeah, because obviously it's okay with ag-res. Is zoning the right place for that to be like, or is it a separate ordinance?
it's not a separate ordinance, it'd be,
Why not?
It could be.
I mean,
Well, that's what communities are doing now, Madison did it, Milwaukee did it, all chickens, so
Yeah.
that's, it's going on all over.
I think the city of Richland Center does.
Yeah, and it's not like right now we're gonna tell them no.
You cannot have livestock, fowl, anything like that, unless you happen to provide the city attorney with documentation that it's like an emotional support duck.
So you could do a Milwaukee, Madison, but not a Richland Center.
well, that doesn't mean it's gonna stay that way. It could change.
Okay, I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
But,
but like I said, I don't know if we need to put it in under residential.
well, here's the thing. R1, we're talking about county property, it's not in the city or the village. And you would think in that context, people wouldn't care if there were chickens in their neighbor's yard, but someone will. So that's why we probably should have wording in here.
Well, you also have to remember there's some communities that are not villages, so like Sextonville and Gotham,
Sure.
they're not villages,
No.
so they're gonna be the county ordinance, whatever that is. So
Right.
it could be people that live very close to their house. So,
Do we want to
It's
be in
different.
charge of that?
That's
Is
the question.
okay.
That was,
Because every municipality is free to pass their own
Right.
ordinance governing the keeping of livestock, and then we're not involved in it. If we pass this, then our sheriff's office is getting calls about my
Right.
neighbor's chicken is waking me up.
am I gonna say anything if I go out there and somebody's got chickens? No.
I know that people that have chickens already, so that's just,
Yeah,
the
I know.
reality is that it's
And,
already
and,
happening.
and Katrina just brought up, as if it ever became a problem, that's something we would wanna have to, think about.
Well, and obviously the townships can do their own ordinances
I
about that if they wanted.
think we could probably if there was a problem animal, we have tools available.
Right.
I'm
that's what
sure.
I'm thinking.
Otherwise, this is something probably best left to the municipalities, because there could well
Yep.
be a municipality that would love to have chickens. And so they say, we allow chickens, and then if we come in and say, no, you're not allowed to have chickens, I just think that that's.
Yeah. Well, no, I was flipping that. I was saying we should put in they are allowed so that when someone who's complaining, we say, well, it's allowed by the permitted uses. But maybe we just don't kick this leave it dog. Maybe just-
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
The only thing I would be concerned about is if the chickens, and I don't know what the correct space is for them, but I did see one where it was a very small space, or I'm not sure how many chickens, but quite a few. I was just concerned that, do they really have enough space to run around, all that kind of thing? That would be the only thing I'd be concerned about, and or manure, but I think that's covered under.
DNR regulations, animal
Yeah.
cruelty statutes. I mean, if it's a thing where
It's
they're getting
embarrassing how
into.
small it's legal.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that I wouldn't have to worry about, but I don't know about space confinement, that kind of thing. I don't know what that would fall under. Or if that's really a concern,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, if somebody has chickens, I'm not gonna say anybody until we get a complaint, then we'll worry about what I was thinking, but
I say we just leave it out and.
nope.
Yeah.
But I thought I wanted to
See
bring
what
it up.
happens.
That was, just Katrina had a question.
Which means anybody can have chickens. That's what that means basically, right?
Yeah.
Unless
We
the
don't have any-
municipality or
Yeah,
something.
we don't have any rules regarding it, so anybody that lives any of the rural areas or both, or Sextonville, whatever, could have chickens.
So one of the things we got R2, we need to stick the R1 back in there, that was in there, and the difference, I figured, the difference between R1 and R2 is R1's out in the country, R2 is in
Subdivisions.
subdivision and like Gotham and Sextonville, okay? And we've had, townships that have wanted, because R1 allows mobile homes, R2 does not. So, but they both allow temporary placement of mobile homes. So they were zoning things out in the middle of a township, R2, because they didn't want a mobile home there. And it's like, well, that's not what the definition says where R2 is supposed to go.
Who was doing that? Some of the villages or, or?
Especially one township done it a lot lately.
Oh, okay.
Dayton has done it quite a bit lately because they don't want mobile homes. Well, I can understand that, but that's not the definition of R2. And one was So,
But do we see those when they come through though, and they're asking for R2? Dayton, or whoever?
yeah, we saw them come through as R2. They're really supposed to be R1.
Okay, so we've allowed them and we shouldn't have, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
but on top of it, the mobile home thing, in R2, I can, our residential one, do we want to include it? It allows a temporary placement, but it's a conditional use permit, but I don't know what to do about it.
so is R2, you said it's subdivisions and like Gotham and
Yeah.
Sextonville, because they're not villages.
Right.
Are all of them are listed as R2 then?
Yeah,
So,
those,
Obviously, there's mobile homes in both of them. That's-
right.
So, but they would have been grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Okay. No new mobile homes could come in
Right.
because it's an R2.
Unless they did the temporary thing.
And
So-
what's the rationale for not wanting mobile homes? Why is that undesirable?
I would guess they feel that it's devaluing their property by having homes next to it. That's my guess.
It's my guess too.
They have a bad reputation,
Mhm.
and some of them deservedly so,
And some not.
and some not, that's the problem.
Oh, we've got one,
And it's even just the home itself, not necessarily the people living.
no,
It's the home itself could potentially drive down the value of their property.
we've got one down and it was a temporary placement of a home. And mobile home, and it was supposed to be out in August, and it's still there, and I've been by there, and it looks like hell, excuse my language, but it looks like hell. And it's sitting empty. And it's dilapidating, and I think that's why they don't want, I mean, it's hard to get, hard to get mobile homes out of there than it is a regular home.
Anyway, this blew up quite a bit here a few months ago and at some point, we're gonna wanna have opportunity for townships to see the draft before we
Yeah.
pass it. And that's one thing they're all gonna be looking for, I think. So we need to make sure we take that into account and that we just give it some thought, because I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
and
what
and I think too, when the rezones come through, if it's R1 out in the middle of nowhere, we gotta say, R2 out in the middle of nowhere, we say, well, doesn't fit our definition of R2.
And then we need to think about how we're gonna correct the other ones. Are we gonna correct the other?
I don't know if we're gonna correct the other ones. But there's other ones we need to correct more than those. The biggest difference between R1 and R2 is but it's also conditional use permit, that's the other thing, They will have,
How much R1 do we have out in the county?
I'd have to look it up, I don't know, top of my head.
I just wonder how big the problem is potentially.
I don't think it's a big problem, I just think that we're having, it is, R2 is being interpreted because they don't want, but at least one township, because they don't want mobile homes.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, what's the downside side to us saying R1 can do it too? How big of a,
That R2 can do the mobile homes also?
yeah,
What's the difference between R1 and R2 other than one is in a village and one isn't?
Nothing really, that's, one allows mobile homes and one does not.
So it's purely the mobile home issue. Then why don't we just leave R2 off and make a decision as to whether or not we maintain either temporary placement of mobile homes, permanent placement of mobile homes,
And
whether
just-
we,
Yep, and then just revise the definition of R1, saying it's, instead of find it here. The district intended to provide high quality, single family year-round residential development. It's 2 to 4.99 acres. And just take out,
just take that next sentence out.
yep,
Then if this development takes place in a rural setting, the residents of the district shall accept those environmental conditions associated with farming and its related uses. If you go live out next to a farm, you got to accept that there's going to be farm smells and farm noises. And
yeah,
if you don't do that, then you're not paying enough attention.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, it just, to me, that's the only, that's a big, I mean, I can really look through those, compare them, make sure that there's nothing more different besides the mobile home thing. But the mobile home thing is a conditional use permit, so that has to get approved.
So there's, if there's issues with devaluation or whatever reason they had to want to deny mobile homes, they'll have to articulate that.
Yeah, could each township do that?
Mhm.
I mean, they could make their own ordinance and say mobile homes in their township, so town of Dayton was wanting to do that, and
Yeah.
they could do that, and then.
Yep.
then they wouldn't-
Yeah, any
allow it.
municipality is free to adopt their
Yep.
own zoning ordinance. They don't have to use ours.
Right.
And
They can make it stricter.
if ours is that offensive to them, then that's just.
Yeah,
That just makes it much simpler than if we just have one R.
and then we, right now, we'll still have the map R1 and R2, I mean,
Because there's, unless we're changing them over, because they'll
Yeah.
be listed as R2 until they're changed R1 if we get rid of R2.
yeah,
And then it'll just be the same, if you change it to something, if you improve the property on an R2 above a certain level, or you stop using it for whatever use, then it reverts to an R1 and you have to bring it into compliance with the.
and although we don't have to, this committee traditionally has, it's, whether it's a conditional use permit or a rezone, we get approval from the township first. So if they don't want it, somebody says, oh, put a mobile home,
We're not gonna approve it,
they're not gonna approve it, so
because
then,
it wouldn't even come to us. But
Well,
wouldn't they have to have an ordinance against it in order to deny it?
Not necessarily. They need to articulate a reason, showing that it's not a discriminatory practice or a
Right.
violation of any civil right, or, there has to be some legitimate reason. They can't just say, I don't like these. I don't want them here.
yeah. But I think to make it simpler, we just have one residential district, not two.
question, while we're still on R1 and R2. You guys didn't mark anything on it, but for the authorized by conditional use permit things, bullet 3. Are there really gonna be a hospital on something that's zoned R1? I mean,
Our hospital is zoned residential.
what?
Or the Richland Center Hospital is in a residential zone.
Well, it's zoned incorrectly then.
Hospital is allowed under a conditional use permit. And
Okay,
so
all right.
Oh,
then now they have their own zoning ordinance, so it's not,
right.
it's
No, right.
not reflective of this, but as an example of a hospital in a residential zone, we just happen to have one.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, I read that and I'm like, wow. The other thing I was wondering, and I don't know if this covers it, sometimes some people have gone, would, like Airbnbs considered tourist homes? I said rooming houses, boarding houses, and tourist homes.
Where are you at now?
Use tourist homes is defined.
Right below the hospital part.
Yeah,
What page?
page 14.
Isn't that the definition from the
Last
state?
I think so.
They call them.
I don't want to necessarily deny it, I just want to make sure that it can. Because we're talking about the other thing. Make sure it's in there for conditional use.
Yeah, because that's what the state, I think, technically calls them. They don't call them an Airbnb because that's a company that
Right.
does that. There's a
Short-term rental.
VRBOs, got short-term rentals. They call it also a tourist home.
All right, hang on. To date, we've said it's a conditional use permit to do a short-term rental. But now we're talking about having this ordinance where there's a license. If we now go to a license model, they don't need a conditional use permit, right?
Correct.
So it wouldn't belong here, is what I'm. See what I'm saying?
When we pass our ordinance.
When we pass our ordinance,
Right.
that would be different.
If we pass it.
So what we would need to do is place rooming houses, boarding houses, tourist houses under permitted uses, say tourist houses, subject to the provisions of ordinance
Yeah, we moved it that
25
What he said.
whatever.
Yeah, when the time
For the
comes.
short-term rental.
Yep, okay.
We'll adjust it at that time then. Makes sense.
Because there's no fee for a permitted use, right? Just a conditional use.
Correct.
Okay, so then that way they're only incurring the fee that they
Yeah.
would do under the short-term rental order.
But the, yeah, that makes, yeah.
Which we still haven't said yet. Right, okay.
That's what I thought I was coming here for today, so.
Yeah, no, this is. I think that was the things we were wondering about that. Commercial, this is where, I think the commercial is fine, except, there's things in the conditional, authorized for conditional use that are
Page 15, okay. I'm-
15 and 16. It has all these things as conditional use permits, and maybe this. I don't know why some of these conditional use, they're businesses, why are they as a conditional and not permitted?
You can't put a hospital in commercial.
Right, I just said some of these things, I was wondering.
No, I just, to Steve's earlier point,
Yeah,
the commercial district would be what I think of
Yeah.
as where you should put a hospital or that or industrial, and
well, it's got medical, dental, medical, and veterinary clinics, but not the hospital.
that's not a hospital.
No. I think we need to kind of look at some of these permitted uses. And then also some that are under conditional use. Because maybe some of these conditional use permits are actually what you want under permitted use.
I'm not seeing a logic as to why one is in one and one in the other.
But there were some things, like technically like campgrounds aren't allowed in commercial that I can see either by temporary or conditional use permit or anything, or permitted use.
What are the campgrounds typically?
Maybe they should be commercial.
I would think so. And is that what ours are listed as?
I think they are, but they're not listed as a use, either permitted or conditional use.
Well, the winery guy, he just switched his to commercial, right?
Right.
So
Sub 3, sub U. Winery / distilleries.
Yeah. And that's why I'm wondering, some of these actually, they're commercial uses, shouldn't they be in the permitted?
That makes sense to me.
A lot of these do.
I'm guessing some of them this probably just didn't get updated as things changed.
Some I can understand are not simple businesses, like a funeral home. You'd like to make sure that that complies with the various mortuary
Right.
statutes, or auto service stations is different than a retail store.
Right.
Because you gotta worry about the oils and gases and chemical runoff.
But like here, drive-in establishments serving food or beverages to customers at a booth or table. To me, that's a commercial use. Car sales, I don't know.
Car sales is similar to the auto shop.
And same with farm implement sales.
considering a mass move all over to permitted then?
I was thinking like the golf course, I don't know. Outdoor theater,
Well, maybe I'll say it this way. Which of these that are under conditional permit should stay that way, and which ones should just be permitted?
Listed as permitted.
Yeah,
yeah,
I,
Funeral homes, so B, C. We can keep D, but we really don't have any authority to prevent them from.
Yeah.
putting it up. So B, C, D, at, E, F. H. Maybe J and L if we're really, I don't associate them with like leaking as much as I do with an
Yeah.
auto service center. The golf courses, I think because of the intensity of the landscaping required, there is some
Yeah.
conservation concerns and we would want to make sure that there's not too many.
So on the permitted uses, people could just do those and not have to get any kind of permit or do anything. The other ones are ones we want them to come to us to do all that.
Like conditional use.
And
But I'm thinking
approve.
like taverns, wineries, recreational tourist home, that would, then will come with, that would be the short-term rental thing. So I'm thinking,
We would put in there, of course, according to whatever our
Yeah.
ordinance is.
I'm looking here, at wineries, distilleries, taverns, mobile home sales. I think those are commercial and they should be just in commercial.
What about taverns? Any concern there as far as like septic or anything like that, that they should be under conditional use permit?
I mean, they have to apply for their liquor license and,
Yeah,
you know, they're subject to compliance checks and,
So we shouldn't have to do any kind of
No.
additional checking.
mm-mm.
unless and until we, you know, I would suspect, if anything, this has to do with, Richland's history with alcohol
Yep.
being a dry county for that.
Probably just never got moved.
Yep,
So to me, let's call it the guardrail is, if it was zoned commercial, then you should expect these kinds of things to happen on that.
Exactly.
right.
So what, if you're gonna make a little noise, then it's not like it's gonna surprise anyone.
Right. So I can, what I can do is I can. Probably the amusement park go-kart thing, that may be something else too, but the rest of, some of the other things, I can type it up onto the Word and then. Move those, some of those other ones over to the permitted uses without getting a conditional use permit for it.
So anything you change, I would suggest maybe putting it in bold so we can know that.
Oh, yeah, I will do the strikeout, do the whole thing.
Okay. Save us time when we review.
I didn't really see anything in here else, did you? I think that was all this,
I just saw one of my notes from AgRes.
okay,
If you go to AgRes, the use is authorized by conditional permit. Item Q, community-based residential facility with 9 or more residents. 9? I mean,
Maybe it's based on a state statute or something.
that's right.
16 is, what is required for protective placement. So the state's only interest was at 16. So I don't
Who
know
knows where the
where
9 came
9.
from then. Unless it changed from 9 to 16 at some point.
Well, but again, what I was driving at was, okay, I want to start a halfway house, but I'm only gonna have 8 people. I don't need to tell anyone, I can just do it, is that what we're saying?
Well, you'd have to probably have a license through the state and all those
Sure,
kind of
but in
things.
terms
But
of,
as far as the county is concerned, as long as it was properly zoned, then you wouldn't have to do anything.
am I saying that right?
Well, I guess why peg a number to it at all then? Either
Exactly.
we're interested in the oversight of our vulnerable residents who would end up placed at a CBRF, in which case it should all be conditional use, or we trust that the people who are starting these businesses are going to be subjected to enough oversight through the state system, through HHS, that we don't need to be paying attention to them in a zoning perspective as well, other than making sure they're compliant with septic
Okay.
and stuff like that. I mean, if there's potentially, you figured 9 residents, maybe 2 or more staff who are there, that's 11 people living in the building. I'm sure that triggers some kind of additional review.
well, okay. Under the permitted uses for that, under I, it says community-based facilities with 8 or fewer residents. And conditional use permit is 9 or more conditional residents.
I don't understand why that's separated.
Well, because I think because at 9, they wanted to come have a person come to do the conditional use permit. If it was less than 9, then they didn't have to.
Why
That's
not
why.
6? Why not 20?
I know,
Yeah,
but I don't know
I don't
why-
understand where
why
that
those
9
numbers were
came
picked,
from.
but they were just saying if it's up to 8, don't need to worry about it. If it's 9 or more, then you need to get a conditional use permit.
We're just
And
guessing.
More oversight, I
We're
guess.
just guessing.
We're just guessing.
Yeah.
We weren't on there.
So, but it should,
We don't know what
but it should be that conditional, that take that I out under the one that's permitted, it's just a conditional use permit to have a community-based facility. I don't know.
It's up to the committee. Do you want to potentially stymie this service and resource by making it a conditional use? Or do you just want to make it a permitted use and rely on,
The state. That's the question.
My thought is to let it be a permitted use and let
Okay.
oversight with HHS, this is just my opinion, HHS and the state. And
Yeah, HHS would have an opinion.
they would definitely be following up and
Yeah.
making sure everything is the way it should be. And that's who should be doing it, not us.
Yeah,
Right.
They would say 9 or 16 or whatever.
Yep.
Should be.
We have to worry about sanitation and all that and make sure it's correctly. set,
Right.
But that's, to me, is all we should have to worry about with those. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk with HHS and just,
Yeah, see what they feel.
if they have an opinion on it at
Yeah.
all, or maybe they know why 9 was picked.
yeah, that's true. They might.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry
Okay.
to go backwards.
Oh, that was a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, I never caught that one. So that was the only things that we saw, and that, but what I can do is I can go back and with Electra, she could kind of remind me of things and then see what I did and then maybe pass it on to you and see if I missed something we talked about, and then bring it back for you guys to.
Where do things stand with the whole fee structure thing?
That's all done.
Huh?
It's done.
It's done.
That got adopted with the code.
Yeah,
And does it match what we said about, if you're just rezoning
Yep.
to get, it's not as much money?
right.
That's in there?
Yep,
25.
yep.
Okay.
And then, but they still have to, that's one thing, this has nothing to do with this, but we're going to be talking with, she and I are gonna sit down with, Todd Rumler, the county surveyor, for the way that things, that they did it. And then it got switched as far as when it talks with the rezonings. As far as these legal non-conforming and the legal non-conforming. And these small things that actually, in reality, when it's less than 10 acres, even though they're existing parcels, they're supposed to do it CSL. So that's not been enforced before, for a period of time, they didn't do it. And so we're gonna set a policy and we'll bring it to you guys for that part too, that make
What do
sure.
those usually cost?
I don't know how much surveys cost.
Really? Okay.
But because, and there's some reason for it, because we've had some instances where the boundaries you come back later and,
That's all I did in my early career was real estate boundary disputes.
and we've got some that, if they want, and it comes into effect, because we've got somebody, a person that they have, one place says they have 2 acres, it's illegal non-conforming, another place it says, we added up, you take it and it's like 1 point some acres. What is the right acreage?
What documents are you talking about? What 2 different documents?
It's what, actually, it's some deeds.
So 2 different deeds?
We're dealing actually right now in a different office, but just as an example, we have a situation where for a while, the county considered this particular parcel 62 acres and then 61. And now we're being presented with a survey indicating that it is 59.62.
Yeah.
And so these are little differences, but when we're talking about 2 acres,
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
2.38 acres matters a lot in that. So,
So, and it comes in with this rezoning, so this stuff is, if it's under 2 acres, and they want to build a house, they need to go to the Board of Adjustments, to make sure it can be built. So if they have this survey done, then they know what the acreage are.
Yeah, if the county thinks of it as 1.86 and then they get a survey done and it's 2.34 acres, then that's probably cheaper than pursuing the Board of Variance issue.
Yep,
I have a few things we didn't hit.
okay,
All right. Maybe this is, no, it is kind of important. We don't define a parcel. It's not the definitions. And it's like, oh, everybody knows what a parcel is. Well, I don't think so. We sometimes call things a lot, sometimes we call them a parcel. What's the difference? And I would like some better,
Yeah, I looked at that too, and I saw the lot is everything, basically. It's like, there's no definition of size of the lot, basic. It's just a,
and we don't have to decide it now. I'm just raising that point that
Yeah.
we should
I mean,
have our attorney look into that.
Have a definitions, let's cover.
lot is fine.
Another question.
It's not.
The extraterritorial zone around, what kind of interfaces are between whatever implications that has with our zoning? I don't even know what.
we don't, that's all the city.
City trumps
So
county.
trumps us. The only thing is, we do this, they have a septic system in there, then it falls under.
So if there's a zoning request in that extraterritorial zone, it does not come to us?
Nope.
It goes to the city? Can we
Well, it
state
goes
that
to the
somewhere?
extraterritorial zoning
Board.
board, which is a joint body. It's
Oh.
a
A
part,
city and township.
yeah, that's 3 members of the town board of the town of Richland, and then a certain number of the members of the planning committee.
Could we add that to the definitions so people are aware of it? And do we have any conservancy districts? And yet it's defined in here.
I don't know of any.
You guys want to create one? What do you think?
Yeah, so,
Like, I mean, one that's specifically in our,
Literally in our county, we have it as a zone description, but I don't know of one.
Conservancy?
where's that at?
What's that?
yeah, it's a conservancy district, it's on page 7.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we have any, but I think a big one would, you call it, that would be like the Lower Wisconsin Riverway.
I understand the concept, but I just wonder why we have it as a zoning district if we don't even have any.
In case one occurs or it happens, I guess, that we've already got it allowed.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Say it, let's start with
I have no idea.
Fish hatchery.
it. All right, I'll shut up now.
Yep.
the scenic resources district. Do we have scenic resources districts?
I would guess not. There are places that deserve it, right?
Well, I guess matter of judgment, isn't it? I mean, what's a scenic spot or something?
Has to do with the scenic byways. It's probably state defined.
Special controls are intended to protect the view of
Yeah.
outstanding scenery.
Yeah. protected views.
Outstanding scenery and natural resources
Scenic
along
byways.
roads and waterways. So I guess along maybe the Wisconsin River,
It's not an official scenic.
it's not.
There's a
but-
map, there's a map.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a.
So.
Yep.
I don't think we have one in Richland County.
Not yet. On the, Mississippi.
Well, so if a town doesn't want mobile homes, all they have to do is zone themselves as a scenic resource district in addition to R1, and then they're good to go.
You're choking Miranda. So, If-
Yeah, I know,
I'll go back, work on it next week, and she and I will, and then we'll get it to,
So when's the right time to put the word out to the townships that we have the draft for their input?
I would think we want to wait till we have our final and then give it to them.
Or do we want to solicit their input, or do we want to tell them what we're giving them?
I think we want to solicit input. Only reason I say that is that there was a big flap where letters were mailed and all this other
Yeah.
business because of the trailers. And one of the big things was they felt like we were doing stuff without telling them, just dumping it in their lap. So I don't want that dynamic to happen.
I would think we want to get our final draft, so we have it worded the way
Sure,
we.
that's why I say final.
Final draft.
Yeah,
That's a
I
draft
agree.
still.
Yeah.
We're not there yet.
Right,
No.
yeah, and once we get that final draft, then it would be something that we feel it looks good to us, and then we would like input from them, and then.
And doing that, leave the changes we've made. So they can see what changes we've made.
Yep,
Yes.
yep.
Leave it as that.
Right, that's the one we'd send
Right,
out and then
and
they
they
could,
see that what we did, yeah.
Right, so it's been an hour and a half.
Yep.
Are we good?
I think so. I think Miranda wants to leave.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Gill,
I'll second.
Billy seconds. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Tell me later. And an extra.
We need a.
District you were talking about.
Oh, there is that.